So thank you so much for joining on this morning. So I recognise a couple of faces from the concourse that we did on Tuesday. So lovely to see you guys again. Oh, we've got another one. Hi, Nicola and Joanna. So my name's Katie. I'm the sustainability manager here at the Trust. I'll let the boys introduce themselves. If you want to take it away, guys.
Kieran, go for it.
Hi, I'm Kieran Lockie, and I'm Sustainable Energy Engineer in the Energy and Sustainability team.
And I'm Max. I'm the energy engineer, so energy manager, sorry. So basically just, yeah, my job is to try and reduce our carbon emissions in the hospital, along with Kieran and Katie, trying to make our hospital a more sustainable environment for the sake of everyone.
Perfect. Cool. So we'll get started. So today we're just kind of, well, this morning for about not very long, half an hour tops. You can get back to, I'm sure you've got busy schedules. So just to kind of conclude our energy saving week and talk about little tips on what you guys can do to save energy and money in the trust and at home, and kind of what we're doing, just a brief little overview, especially with what the boys are doing in the trust, just to, like Max said, for the benefit of everyone. So we will get started. Perfect. So first of all, I'm just going to explain a little bit about our green plan. So some of you might be aware of our green plan. It's essentially a guide on how we as a trust are going to be hitting our carbon neutral targets. Obviously I don't think I need to go into much detail why we need it. We are in a sort of climate emergency, and this kind of this idea of an ecological breakdown, and that we definitely need to be hitting carbon neutral targets, carbon zero targets as soon as possible. So the general NHS have put in place targets that we need to meet. So we need to be, as a whole institution, as the NHS, we need to be net zero by 2050. So although that's still a little bit away, it's actually going to be a real challenge, and it's going to take a lot of work to kind of get us there. And as a trust, we want to be in line with that, obviously, and ideally by in the next, well, under 10 years, 9 years now, we do want to be 50% less carbon. So we do need to make sure that that we're hitting as many targets within our green plan as possible. So there's loads of different ways that we need to do that. So we need to kind of decarbonize. Hi, Angie. And decarbonize. We need to have a greener grid. So we need to push things like renewables. We need to make sure that any new buildings that we do on the trust, that we are hitting certain standards set out by the green NHS, so that it going forward it is as sustainable as possible. And of course things like procurement, making sure that we're buying responsibly, and our transport, just making sure that all of our transport, whether that's for patients or for staff or our own fleet, are as sustainable and as low carbon as possible. So that's kind of our main things we need to do. How we're going to do that is, I know this seems like a lot, this slide. So these are all of our 50 actions within our green plan. So if you kind of have a skim through, don't worry, I won't go through all of them. You can see that there's a big old range of things, you know, from cycle parking to manual energy set points, and there's loads of different things, essentially, encouraging recycling and reusing, paper reduction, things like that. Loads of different things that us as a team are kind of individually and as a general team trying to tap into and make sure that we hit these things by certain times with the help of staff and kind of outside bodies as well. And just yeah, just there's a million different things we need to do, but energy is a massive part of it, and the boys are amazing at trying to sort of tap into those little by little bit, and it's yeah. So that's kind of our green plan, just a really quick overview. So I will hand over to Max for the next bit.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. So yeah, I think it would be important to give you a bit of context regarding the trust consumption, where we are at the minute. So just so you know, the trust is being quite big, and last year we consumed in electricity the equivalent of more than 16,000 households, which is gigantic, obviously, and basically we use this to cover our services like lighting, ventilation, cooling, heating, and energy-intensive areas like theatres and ICUs, for instance. So again, we are all fully aware of the bullish trend of the energy prices. So last year, to give you an indication, we paid about £8,000 worth of electricity and gas. This year it's not finished yet because we are working on, from April to March in financial years, but we are looking at £13 million, 1-3, and next year is going to jump again to £21 million. So massive bills we are getting every year for electricity and gas. So obviously it makes sense, just from a purely economical perspective, to try and reduce this as much as we can. Can we have the next slide, please, Katie? And so this is why, yeah, some examples of projects, energy saving projects we've been working on lately with the team. So the one is the off-site renewables. So we've been working with the Cambridgeshire County Council to set up this project. So basically, this is located at the Babraham Park and Ride down the road. They are going to be putting some solar carports in most of the car parks, and they are going to be running this directly, feeding this directly onto the hospital. So we're going to get a good chunk of green electricity thanks to this program. So, and we are looking at other possibilities down the line. Again, being off-site. Regarding on-site renewables, we have some PV solar installed, mainly on the Rosie building. This is a bit more difficult on that aspect because basically the roof space that we have is already cramped with all of the other plants, ventilation, cooling plants that we have and need for the trust. So we are a bit limited in that, but we are trying to do everything we can on this, and that's why we're also mainly exploring off-site renewables. We've been installing heat pump technology quite a lot, again, because this is the future, so we need to do this to avoid using gas. We've rolled out LED lighting slowly but surely throughout the buildings because, again, this is much more efficient than fluorescent or the older technology that we have. BMS, so that's building management systems, for the ones that don't know about what BMS is. Basically, you have to think of like kind of a computer controlling remotely different things in the trust, like the temperature set points, how much we are heating or cooling some areas, how much we are ventilating. So not all the hospital is controlled by this BMS, but some parts are, and we can act on it, tweak some parameters to try and save energy. For instance, is some of the clinics we're trying to work on switching everything off at night when we don't have any patient nor staff in the areas, again, to be saving energy and cost. And we've been also working with security and med-res teams to ensure that lights are turned off at night in areas where there's no staff nor patients. But this is only, these are only a few examples of many projects we have. So I'll let now Kieran introduce a bit of some energy saving tips that we can give you for work and home. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Yeah, so we've just put together a few tips for energy saving tips at work and at home, because there's obviously the things that Max has outlined there that we're doing on site, but there's lots of other things that everyone else can do, and they are quite simple and straightforward, but as a collective, obviously there's thousands of members of staff here, so if we're all doing these tips, which are ultimately switching off at night, then it can make a big difference. So the first one there, yes, is make sure you turn off your computers when you leave for the day. Again, obviously it's very basic, but obviously we all have busy jobs and it can be forgotten about at the end of the night. So if we can ensure that we're doing that, we did a trial with regards to a sort of simplified 5-people office and 5 PCs in an office, you can save up to £450 if we ensure that we are switching them off at the end of the day. Making sure we turn off radiators in rooms that aren't in use or at the end of the night, and making sure air conditioning units are not left on when not needed. Particularly air conditioning units are very energy intensive and to consume a lot of energy and cost a lot of money and emit a lot of carbon. So making sure they're turned off when not needed is very important. Also, making sure they're not set too low if possible. They can be set down to 16, 17, 18 degrees in cooling mode, which is far too low. So if we make sure they're set to sort of 21, 22 degrees, that should be more. If you're lucky enough to have them, that should be more than sufficient. Adding a scheduled turn-off period on the printers, the sort of large printers do have a schedule in them. I think Max successfully implemented ours, which again just makes sure it's switched off when it's not required, and obviously saves a bit of energy there. Again, another basic one, obviously making sure we turn off light switches when we're leaving the rooms. Again, very basic, but we know it doesn't always happen. If you're part of the Think Green Impact scheme that I think Katie might touch on towards the end, they do have there are bits in there that, like making sure lights are switched off. We leaving posters by light switches to remind people at the end of the night can be a useful tool. We're making sure that happens. And then the last one there is making sure your light bulbs are changed to LEDs. So this would be best if you was able to highlight to us, like Max had said, we are going for a program of upgrading our lights to LEDs. They're 50% more efficient. So if you were able to detect that your lighting is of the fluorescent tube variety, basically if you can see fluorescent tubes in your lighting, if you were to flag it up through the energy email inbox, then we can look at surveying and upgrading your area if it is possible. So we just thought we'd add a slide for some tips at home. Obviously, the cost of energy is increasing dramatically at the moment, so we just added a couple of tips. The first one, closing curtains when dark, as well as the privacy benefits, is obviously all about reducing the heat loss through the windows in the winter to save energy on your heating bills. The next one, insulating your hot water tank and pipes. Again, that's just reducing heat loss from your hot water systems, which are operating 24/7, storing the water. So they'll be, if they're not well insulated, they'll be constantly losing heat. So the next one is about flash ventilation. Is a term that's used to describe it. It's opening your windows for 10 minutes twice a day to reduce the humidity in the house. So as well as freshening up the air, removing all the stale air and freshening the air, it's actually known to be energy efficient because the drier air is quicker to heat up by your heating system. So that one is also an energy saving tip. Draft proofing windows and doors, again trying to avoid any heat loss through gaps that you might have in your doors. You are able to attempt this yourself if you're a keen DIYer by buying strips, but also you can get somebody else to help you with that if needed. And then finally, purchasing energy efficient equipment or even second-hand appliances. So we have the energy label scale, so purchasing as energy efficient equipment as you can. It's often more financially viable in the longer run with the lower running costs. And then another one, obviously, on washing machines is to operate them at a lower temperature where possible. You can often get a register that you can often get 3 cycles at 30 degrees compared to 2 cycles at 40 degrees for the same energy consumption.
Perfect. Thank you, Kieran. So the last kind of bit that we want to cover is obviously, as Kieran said, the energy bills are massively rising at the moment. I think everyone's struggling a little bit with paying their bills, but there is funding and support out there for anyone that might need it. There's lots of kind of different ways you can sort of look at funding and support. So there's kind of ideas through the something like the Energy Saving Trust, which is kind of the reason that we're doing this week. They're kind of the ones that sort of that kind of coined this week, I suppose. And they have loads of, like we kind of had in the last couple of slides that Kieran was talking about, loads of quick and easy tips on how to reduce your energy consumption, and just make sure that you're as energy efficient as possible. And in turn, that will reduce your bills. So there's loads of really easy tips on places like the Energy Saving Trust. I will send this PowerPoint round so everyone's got the links and they're all sort of hyperlinked, so should be able to get onto them nice and easy. But do let me know if not. Same kind of thing with this one here. So this is for Cambridgeshire residents. So this is again nice and easy, energy efficient tips and tricks, and also available funding that's out there. You know, there are things which kind of comes down here as well, like the household support fund, which can kind of be broken down into financial support for pensioners. So if you are I can't remember which, I think it's before 1956. If you were born on that year or before that, then you are eligible to receive some support and funding from the local government to help pay for things like your food bill and your energy bills. And then there's other kind of just normal financial support through the household fund, again through the Cambridgeshire County Council, that if you kind of hit a certain threshold that you earn, I think it's just below 18,000 a year, that you can, you know, receive this sort of financial help, and it is there available if you need it. So there's kind of ways that you can so that there's tips and tricks on how to reduce your energy bill anyway, but there is sort of funding out there should you need it. But there is loads, and there's also something called warm hub schemes, which I'm not sure if people have heard of, which is a really, really lovely scheme. It's actually all across the country basically, but it's in Cambridgeshire. There's it's community run, and there's certain hubs. A lot of time it's in kind of like village halls or churches, and they're free to go for anyone who might need them and is struggling to pay their energy bills. And they can go down to these venues, and it's warm, and there's things to do. It's a way for people to talk to each other. So it's really lovely for people who may be a bit more vulnerable, maybe living by themselves, and they can still stay well in the winter and the cold months, and kind of get that support as well, that the kind of information's all there. So it's really lovely. It's kind of weird to think about. It's not a particularly nice thing that still has to happen, but it's a lovely thing that does kind of happen, and it's all community run, and it's really lovely. So that's on the Cambridgeshire local government website as well. There's loads of information on that. And then if you're kind of interested in retrofitting your house to make it as energy efficient as possible, although arguably is probably not as much money given out as it maybe should, it is a big priority for the government to make sure that people's houses within the country are as energy efficient as possible, because that's ultimately such an important part of how we're going to hit our targets as a country. And how we're going to be as carbon neutral as possible. So there is funding out there through your local government. So this one is for Cambridgeshire specifically, but if anyone lives in Essex or Sussex or anything like that, there'll be similar kind of funding out there, and I'm happy to kind of look into it if anyone wants it. But it will allow you to insulate your home and provide kind of like little building upgrades to make it as energy efficient as possible. So there's lots of different types of kind of funding out there, depending on what kind of route you feel you need to go down, and if you want to, or any of your loved ones might want to. But yeah, so I'll be sending this out, and there's loads of information on these hyperlinks and loads of information on the internet. So if you just give it a quick Google, anything comes up as much kind of help as you need and want, essentially.